Chapter 224. 4. Thank you for being able to love him so much, Mo Jingyu. You must remember this well. The barbarian tribe belongs to you, and it was never my obligation to help you. But as I saw you to be someone as close as a brother is to me, I did not hesitate in the slightest to help you protect the things that belong to you. And now, just because of one woman, you are choosing to deny all that I have done for you for so many years without asking for anything in return. When the man spoke about that, Mo Jingyu could do nothing but to remain silent. That's right. All these years, if not for Yen Shu, the barbarian tribe might have been thrown into endless upheaval, to become a pan of scattered sand. He was the last person in the world who had any right to admonish Yen Shu. But he really did not want his closest friend, who was as close to him as a brother, to misunderstand the woman he loved so much, as he would only end up being caught in between the two of them. The atmosphere had suddenly turned frighteningly oppressive. Qing Lanfei suddenly stretched her hand out to unclasp the hand tightly holding onto her waist, as she looked into the man's surprised eyes. She then smiled reassuringly at him, and went on to stand up from her chair. Looking up towards the seat on the pedestal at Yen Shu sitting there stony-faced, Qing Lanfei suddenly smiled, and then bent her body at the waist to bow deeply before him. The woman's action caused Mo Jingyu to stare as his eyes widened. Fei Er, what are you trying to do? Although he knew he was greatly indebted to Yen Shu, and that he was in the wrong here, he could not possibly allow Fei Er to do something like this for his sake. They had been close as brothers for many years, and the two men knew each other too well. Some things did not need to be spelt out too clearly between them, and both of them would know it in their hearts. So what was Fei Er trying to accomplish by doing that? Yen Shu was also taken aback for a moment, like he had not expected that proud woman to be capable of such an action. But he quickly reverted back to his stony facade. See what kind of a trick you are trying to pull. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Qing Lanfei quickly straightened herself after that deep bow. The corners of her lips curved up with a gentle smile as she then said softly, "Thank you. For Jingyu to have someone who truly and sincerely cares for him, he should be honored." Yen Shu replied in an indifferent voice that was neither hot or cold. "He is a brother to me. It is only right that I treat him good. I do not need you to tell me that." Those words could be said to be rude and impolite, and Mo Jingyu immediately felt his anger rise in him when he heard that. What right did he have to say that to Fei Er? He could never bear to say a single harsh word to Fei Er himself. Qing Lanfei held down Mo Jingyu, who was about to flare up, and continued on to say, "I do not know why you hold such strong enmity towards me, but I would like to say that I am with Jingyu only because the two of us are in love, and for no other reason. I only want us to be happy. I do not really care whether people around us would give us their blessings or acknowledgement, and I believe it is the same for Jingyu as well." She saw Yen Shu's face turn an uglier shade as expected, and she went on to say softly, "But it is different in your case. You are someone Jingyu sees to be as close as a brother to him, and that means you're his kin. The one thing he wishes most from you is your acknowledgement of us here." Chapter 225. 1. Don't be too happy yet. You might stumble and fall from my perspective. I really hope to gain your approval as well. Qing Lanfei's eyes were clear as she looked straight and unwavering at Yen Shu's dark and gloomy face. Her voice was soft, but she said with strong resolve, "If you are the person who cares for Jingyu the most throughout this entire world, then I am the one who loves him the most. For two people who are willing to give up their lives for each other, when you asked me how could I still be alive?" The woman's long eyelashes lowered, to cover the rush of emotions rising up in her eyes. "It is because he is still here. I cannot make myself leave him behind to live in loneliness by himself. So as long as I have not received irrefutable news that ascertains his death, I will not allow myself to die." Despite the fact that her greatly weakened primary soul had been imprisoned in the divine temple for several hundred years, she had never given up on fighting to live. Mo Jingyu felt as if thousands and thousands of ants were biting painfully into his heart. He held Qing Lanfei's hand tightly, and said in a deep voice, "Don't say anything more, Fei Er. You do not need to do anything to gain that fella's approval. I am the one whom you will be spending the rest of your life with, and it is enough that you love me. As long as I know that Fei Er is the best woman there is under the heavens, and the one who suits me the best. That is more than enough for me. Jingyu. Qing Lan Fei saw the creased brows, and the look of displeasure on the man's face. She could not help but curve up the ends of her lips. This guy is still the same as always, who just can't bear seeing her suffer the slightest aggrievement. Even though she did not feel aggrieved in the slightest, but he still took it to heart. Yan Shu watched the two of them defending each other to and fro, and he very nearly vomited out blood and rage. So the two of them were making him out to be a villain that was trying to break up their marriage? All right. This must have been accumulated bad luck for 8 lifetimes, that I came to meet the two of you. Both of you must have been born to be my ultimate bane. Yan Shu drew in a deep breath, finally conceding. The barbarian tribe rightfully belongs to you after all, and I was merely helping you watch over them. Now that you've awoken, I should hand it back to you. I will go tell everyone the news in a while. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Don't do that. Mo Jingyu quickly raised his hands up to say, what's all this about yours and mine? Haven't you been doing a good job as the chieftain all this time? You've done a much better job than I did before, and it is clear that you are more suited to be the chieftain. Moreover, suddenly changing chieftains at a time like this would surely cause jitters among the people, and that would surely cause some problems. Yin Shu's eyes flared wide. What do you mean? Are you going to just leave the barbarian tribe in my hands? Why not? Mo Jingyu said in a tone that sounded like it was only natural. What about you then? I will naturally have to accompany Fei Er and help her gather back her lost soul fragments. Mo Jingyu said as he gazed tenderly at the woman at his side. Chapter 225. 2. Don't be too happy yet. You might stumble and fall. Although Yin Shu seething with anger, he knew it in his heart. The reason Qing Lan Fei was suffering from deficiencies in her soul was because she had tried to save Mo Jingyu. If she had not executed a forbidden technique in order to prolong Mo Jingyu's life, the man would have already lost his life before Yin Shu could go bring his flesh body back in one piece. So Yin Shu could not really criticize the man when Mo Jingyu was now seeking to use the barbarian tribe's forbidden technique to try to save her. But he was going to have to suffer quite a bit for it. Forget it. He was not going to bother himself with their business anymore. Since both of them did not seem to care, why should he be the one to stop them? Just let them be. Once Yin Shu was able to straighten out his thoughts, he wasn't going to split hairs any longer, but turned around and walked out from there. He did not even turn his head as he raised a hand to leave with a nonchalant, "All the best to you then." Qing Lan Fei watched the figure as it disappeared, her eyes flashing with a glint. Is he angry with us? Why would he? Mo Jingyu caressed her cheek with a laugh. That fella has a sharp mouth, but his heart is soft like tofu. His words might have sounded cold and heartless, but he is actually worried about you in his heart. Huh? Qing Lan Fei lifted her eyes to look quizzically at the man. Mo Jingyu stretched his hand out and smiled. Look, he has even given me the key. All of the barbarian tribe's most important secrets are kept in this tent. Qing Lan Fei turned her gaze to look down, and saw a pale yellow jade badge that had suddenly appeared in Mo Jingyu's hand. She did not know when Yin Shu could possibly have given him the key. Qing Lan Fei was feeling rather moved as she gripped the man's large hand and said softly, "He is truly a good person. Who would say otherwise?" Mo Jingyu said with a sigh, "My life's been worth living having had a brother like him." White Fen's Land. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Feng family second young master. People from the Evil Purgers Coalition are here again. Upon hearing the servant's frantic voice coming in to report to him, the seething rage Qing Tianlin was already trying to suppress in his chest almost exploded out unchecked. His malevolent black eyes turned to gaze upon the trembling servant kneeling on the floor. Didn't they just come to search the place a few days back? Why have they come back here again? Although Qing Tianlin's puppet zombies had not been discovered, who could be certain that that bunch of people would not suddenly launch an attack on him? He had been dogged by so much trouble recently that he could not help but become overly suspicious. Those people said that since the news came out from within the Feng family, then it could not possibly be completely baseless. So they want to search the place once more, in case there is anything they overlooked the last time, claiming that they will be held responsible if any panic breaks out because of this. Chapter 225. 3. Don't be too happy yet, you might stumble and fall, what a load of rubbish. Qing Tianlin smashed his palm heavily down, and the chair's armrest was crushed into dust under his hand. But what was more terrifying than the crushed splinters was the expression on the man's face. The servant jumped in shock at Qing Tianlin's sudden action, and he quickly scrambled his way out from the house upon relaying the message. The second young master's temperament was getting harder and harder to fathom. His precious little life is more important, so he would not come to make reports next time even if he was beaten to death. The sinister aura Qing Tianlin exuded almost engulfed him completely, and right at that moment, a low cough sounded outside the door. A man's frail voice tinged with mirth then followed. What has gotten you fired up into such a rage? Which blind fool would dare come provoke you like this? Qing Tianlin was taken aback, surprised that he had actually allowed himself to lose his alertness from rage, which caused him to fail to notice that someone had gotten so close to him. But when he saw the person standing at the door, his eyes immediately turned more malevolent, and his voice cold as he said, "Who let you out?" The person at the door was seated in a specially made wheelchair, and was dressed in a sky-blue brocade robe, gracefully refined and extraordinarily good-looking. There was a sense of reckless indifference in between his brows that was simply out of this world, and the unique air he carried around him was highly captivating. But his face was uncommonly pale, and it was clear to see that that condition had stemmed from the man being plagued by long years of sickness and a weak constitution. That person was the young heir of the Feng family, who had not been seen for many years, who was said to have contracted an illness too horrible to show himself, Feng Tianjin. He had indeed contracted a foul disease, and it was true that he had a weak body constitution, but who still remembered what a spirited man who was filled with so much vigor he had been back then. A great young talent well known throughout the White Fen's lands. Just over one night, he had almost lost everything. And all of that was due to the demonic devil who held the Feng family under his control in his demonic claws. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Feng Tianjin had known for a long time that this person was not the real Feng Tianhen, but was actually a demon who seized and was living in that body. No matter how a person changed, it was not possible for them to change so completely. No matter whether it was in terms of character or his style of doing things, he had changed completely. If he was to believe that the cowardly and snivelly Feng Tianhen could possibly change into such an unfathomable entity overnight, he would have to be a complete idiot. Staring into the man's terrifying malevolent eyes, Feng Tianjin was seemingly unaffected. He was now left with only a wasted body, right at death's door anyway, and Feng Tianhen would not dare to really kill him after all. Inside the Feng family, the things he was in control of was still more than that of his greedy and foolish father. I came here just to see my adorable younger brother, who seems to have attracted the attention of some pesky people. I thought that it was a most unfortunate thing to happen, and merely came here to show some concern, Feng Tianjin said with a disarming smile. Chapter 225. 4. Don't be too happy yet, you might stumble and fall. But it was that smile that seemed to further agitate the man who was already almost exploding with rage. In an instant, the wraith-like figure came to appear right before Feng Tianjin, and clutched him by the throat, lifting his entire body off the wheelchair. His body suspended in mid-air, and his entire weight pulling him down from the chokehold upon his neck. Feng Tianjin almost suffocated to death. But he was the same kind of man with the enemy in front of him. Maniacs who did not fear death. Placed in such a critical situation, he could still smile. He managed to squeeze out a smile upon that pale white face, though it looked uglier than death. Flying into a rage out of humiliation? To be the head of the family clan, one would have to shoulder much more than this. You'd better not lose your cool here. Being so easily irritable isn't the making of a leader, you know. Feng Tianjin's words stopped before he could finish, as the man's grip clutching his neck tightened further. He was then tossed out from the hand, with enough force to smash a high-grade black sandalwood chair, when his body crashed into it. Feng Tianjin vomited out a mouthful of blood and coughed violently, a highly pitiful and wretched sight. Qing Tianlin could not really be bothered with the man, and he just went on to say in a low voice, "I do not have the time to bother myself with you now. Wait till I come back. In the meantime, you can think of the ways you would like to die." After saying that, he immediately strode his way out from there. Waiting till the man has disappeared from sight, two armored men suddenly appeared from the shadows. They quickly went over to help Feng Tianjin up from the ground, before they carefully put him back into his wheelchair. "Young master, why are you doing this?" One of the men then took out an elixir to feed Feng Tianlin, his actions seemingly well practiced. The expression on his face seemed rather worried, as he looked at the sliver of blood at the corner of Feng Tianjin's lips, and his frighteningly pale face. Every time the young master goes to provoke that man, he would always end up getting injured. So why does he persist in doing that? Feng Tianjin felt a lot better after taking the elixir, and his lips curved up slightly as he shook his head. If I do not do this, how would he possibly come to let his guard down against me? And the angrier I see him become every time, it just tells me my pretense is succeeding. Wait till he has relaxed his guard against me completely, and thinks that I have lost all will to fight him, that I am just a brash-talking lunatic with nothing but a sharp tongue. That would be the beginning of his downfall. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. He gazed far into the distance, and seemed to be lost in thought. He has had his way for too long already, and now trouble has come knocking on his door, hasn't it? On the other side of the mansion, Qing Tianlin was quickly making his way towards the Feng Mansion Great Hall, in the main building, as several jittery servants followed behind him. All of them maintained a far distance away from the man, as they exchanged glances with each other. Why does the look in second young master's eyes look like he is going out there to kill someone? That cannot be possible, right? Those people are from the Evil Purgers Coalition, the greatest power there is in the White Fens lands. No matter how strong the second young master is, he couldn't possibly dare to clash with them, would he? Qing Tianlin moved very quickly, and he reached the place within the time it took for a cup of tea. But he had just gotten close, and have not even stepped into the main hall, when he suddenly heard a man's voice he was familiar with. The voice was cold and magnetic, melodious like jade beads upon a platter, but it caused Qing Tianlin to clench his jaw tightly together, wishing for nothing more than to kill the man. Chapter 226. 1. The esteemed Lord Coalition Vice Chief. Seems like the Feng family's hospitality needs to be improved. We've been waiting here for almost an hour, and no one has shown up yet. They do not seem to think very much of our Evil Purgers Coalition at all. That was an infuriated man's voice as he struck his fist onto the table before him, causing the cups of tea on the table to rock and shake. The strong and solid table actually opened up a crack right over its surface, looking greatly weakened and almost about to break apart, but was just able to maintain its original shape and not fall into pieces. There were both men and women, numbering around 10 or more people, some seated, some standing inside the hall, all of them dressed in strange half-black, half-white clothes. An emblem was worn right across their chests, a cross formed with the image of a sword and saber. They were the Evil Purgers Coalition's two divine artifacts, the Hidden Star Sword and the Chasing Sun Saber. The group of people all carried an uncommon air about them, but the most eye-catching one among them was a man who was seated upright in his chair, calm and collected. His eyes were narrowed as he drank his tea, not revealing any trace of impatience in his expression. What was more astounding about the man was his head of silver hair that flowed down like snow, striking a strong contrast against his deep maroon robes, making for a sight of indescribable beauty. When the table almost collapsed under the strike from the man with an explosive temper, the things on the table rattled and groaned, shaking tremendously. Only the cup of tea before the silver-haired man remained still and unmoving, where not even a ripple ran across the surface of the tea. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The man suddenly stretched out his hand with well-defined fingers to raise the cup of tea up to his lips for a slight taste. The fair skin of his hand stood out nicely against the green porcelain teacup, looking almost translucently smooth. The calm and unfettered demeanor was the complete opposite of the violent and raging man, a clear and striking contrast. I say, my Lord Coalition Vice Chief, can you not be so calm about it? You are just making me look unrefined and boorish by doing this. Did we come all the way here just to have tea? Is the Feng Mansion's tea really that good? The person who spoke was the same man that punched his fist onto the table. Although he was rather quick-tempered and rash, he was not the brawny type with bulging muscles like a boar. He looked to be about 20 years of age, with an attractive-looking countenance, especially those big round eyes of his. They became wide as saucers every time he grew angry, that made him look rather adorable. The man who had his head lowered as he sipped his tea then moved slightly, silver hair strands cascading down his side from his movement, to reveal the man's flawlessly perfect countenance in full view of everyone present. His lowered gaze looked up slightly, and his beast-like dark green eyes shone with a strange light within, looking so incredibly mesmerizing. His face was as beautiful as a painting, and seemed to be encased with a layer of icy frost, expressionless and emotionless. Chapter 226. 2. The esteemed Lord Coalition Vice Chief, despite the fact that the aura he gave out was so distant and aloof, it still held a kind of charm that made people submit themselves to him. Maybe very few people would know of him in the White Fens land, but down in the Constellation land, who did not know that his silver hair and green eyes were the unique symbols of the terrifying death-dealing god, Qing Yi Li? This man had always been mysterious and powerful. No matter where he went, he was never seen to be ordinary. Towards the impatience and infuriation shown by the people around him, the man merely raised his head up slightly and said 2 words in a clear, cold voice. Good tea. Upon hearing those 2 words, the already enraged man almost vomited out blood. He drew in a deep breath, and took a good while before he was able to suppress the raging emotions inside. He then asked the man in a slow voice, since the Feng family is clearly showing utter disregard to the evil purgers coalition like this, shouldn't we take the first strike and destroy this place? Hearing that, Qing Yi Li merely said in an unhurried tone, the 4 great families have always held each other in check, maintaining a balance. If this balance comes to be destroyed, it will not do the White Fens land any good. But the Feng family's appetite seems to have gotten bigger and bigger. If we do not stop them, the balance will not be maintained for any much longer. They might even become a threat to the position of our evil purgers coalition in these lands. I know what to do, Qing Yi Li said indifferently. The moment that Qing Tianlin arrived, this was the statement that he heard. That chillingly familiar voice made him pause slightly before he took wide strides to go into the main hall. Although there were so many people in the spacious main hall, he immediately spotted the cold and aloof man with silver hair and green eyes seated right in the middle. Murderous rage immediately surged maniacally up inside in that instant. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Qing Yi Li, you dared to set foot into my territory. You're courting your own death. The hate-filled voice came out from the gentle and handsome-looking man standing at the door, and it looked like he suddenly realized something a moment later when he said, so you are the one who told the evil purgers coalition to come find trouble with me? I must say that that's jolly kind of you. This filthy animal here had been dead set against him right from the very beginning. If not for his pesky interference, Qing would have been his to have long ago. It's all because of him, who upended his entire plan. Everyone from the evil purgers coalition were suddenly stupefied. Why did this man suddenly appear, and was immediately staring murderously at their Lord Coalition Vice Chief? What kind of nonsense was he even spouting out of his mouth? Seeing Feng Tianlin take a few big strides forward, and was going to grab Qing Yi Li, a tall brawny figure of a man, who was built like an iron tower, suddenly moved to stand in front of him, blocking his way forward. His face was unfriendly as he asked, who do you think you are? Go get your Feng family's family head sorry behind out here to speak to us. Chapter 226. 3. The esteemed Lord Coalition Vice Chief, not to mention how long they have been made to wait. A strange person had now suddenly just appeared out of the blue, and was immediately seeking to lay hands on their Lord Coalition Vice Chief. Absolutely unpardonable. After the towering man spoke those words aloud, the several servants behind Qing Tianlin could clearly feel that the temperature in the hall drop immensely, which was almost freezing them to death. The murderous rage Qing Tianlin exuded almost coalesced into physical form, which terrified the servants into almost wetting themselves. The servants could not help but tremble and shake. Is the second young master going to kill someone? Although the second young master is highly skilled, but these people are from the Evil Purgers Coalition. If he were to really kill someone in a rash fit of rage, the entire Feng family would surely become the first target, that is to be annihilated by the Evil Purgers Coalition. But fortunately, Qing Tianlin still had an ounce of sensibility in him, and did not let himself turn into a demon. After many rounds of tumultuous emotional changes in his heart, Qing Tianlin finally showed an extremely calm smile on his face. I fear our esteemed guests here have fallen for the vile words of nefarious liars, and came to have some misunderstanding towards you, our Feng family. I forgot to introduce myself. I am the current Feng family head, Feng Tianhen. You, a fresh and pretty-faced young woman suddenly asked with an eyebrow raised. Isn't the Feng family's head Feng Sen? I don't think he is that old, that he is unable to come out to greet his guests yet, is he? Even if he is indisposed, at least the Feng family's young heir Feng Tianjin should come out on his behalf. So from which family did this self-proclaimed head pop out of? The moment her voice fell, the young woman eyed Qing Tianlin suspiciously, her face cold and stern. And, how can you be so impolite as to address our Lord Coalition Vice Chief by his name? What a foul attitude. I think that the Feng family has existed in the White Fen's land for too long, and have grown too willfully arrogant. Has the Feng family forgotten that the Evil Purgers Coalition is the mightiest power throughout the White Fen's land? Everyone in the Evil Purgers Coalition were all elite talents, and they have held that high position for a long time, so it was natural that they carried themselves with a certain level of aura. Even from such a young woman, the aura she emitted was rather intense and oppressive. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. But such a level of aura would not affect Qing Tianlin much. But the thing that surprised him was what the young woman's words revealed to him just now. Coalition Vice Chief. She called him their Coalition Vice Chief. That's Qing Yili? How is that possible? How could he be the Evil Purgers Coalition's Vice Chief? He had clearly just seen him down in the lower realm, just a few months ago when his puppetry technique had been sealed by Qing's blood. So he had not fought Qing Yili back then. In the span of a few short months, not only had he come to the White Fen's land, he had even become the Evil Purgers Coalition's Vice Chief. But very soon, he began to laugh softly, and he said in a mocking tone, Qing Yili, have you come to learn to employ such low and despicable methods as well? Didn't you used to despise such things the most before? When did you turn to become one of them as well? Why don't you share with us how you managed to cheat your way into gaining the Evil Purgers Coalition Chief's trust? And how did you manage to snag the position of Vice Coalition Chief? Chapter 226. 4. The esteemed Lord Coalition Vice Chief, what impudence! Before he could finish, he was interrupted by a woman's cold and slightly raspy voice. It was a woman standing with her arms crossed at a corner of the table, who had one half of her face veiled by long strands of her hair. The other half that was visible to everyone was seductive and enchanting, exuding a soul-captivating charm. The inky black eye that was exposed looked a little absorbing with its deep darkness. Seemingly a little out of place against that alluringly beautiful face was that raspy voice that could be said to grate on one's ears to hear. Our Lord Coalition Vice Chief and the Coalition Chief are close kin from the same bloodline, and we will not allow anyone to question or criticize it. What? Qing Tianlin was stunned, as his face revealed the flabbergasted shock he was feeling. Qing Tianlin is of the same blood as the Evil Purgers Coalition's Coalition Chief? How? Is that possible? He was clearly just a mangy wolf Qing had picked up in the snow. When he was first brought back, he did not even know how to communicate normally with humans, and lived a nocturnal life like any pack of wolves, eating raw flesh and feeding on fresh blood. It had taken Qing a great deal of effort before she was able to help him kick off those beastly habits. That's right. He had always been reckless and rash, doing things as he pleased and only listening to Qing Qing's words. Qing Qing and him had their flesh bodies destroyed, and their souls were transported into this world. But Qing Yili had been brought to this world in his entirety, so how could he possibly be from the same bloodline as the coalition chief? They had all passed through several dimensions across parallel universes to come to this faraway world. Or could it be said that something so unbelievably coincidental can really happen in the universe? All kinds of complicated expressions flashed across the man's face, and they were all seen by the pair of cold and emotionless green eyes. He raised his hand up slightly in a signal to all the others to step back. His tall, lean figure then slowly rose from the chair and took a few steps forward. Nodding his head slightly, he said, "We ask for the Feng family head to please cooperate with us. If it is found that the Feng family has been maligned in the end, the Evil Purgers Coalition will definitely give the Feng family a satisfactory response." His words were highly fitting and appropriate, the tone very businesslike, and it seemed like he did not know the person standing before him. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Yu Qing Yuli then gave the others in the main hall a few words of instruction, and the 10 over members of the Evil Purgers Coalition made their way out after acknowledging their orders. Only the woman with one half of her face covered by her hair remained behind, merely walking a short distance further away as she went to keep watch at the door. "Just what are you really trying to do?" Qing Tianlin spat out those words slowly with a mirthless smile on his face. Regardless of whether Qing Yili really shared the same bloodline as the Evil Purgers Coalition's coalition chief, how could Qing Tianlin possibly not see Qing Yili was intentionally finding trouble with him? Against his expectations, Qing Yili merely raised an eyebrow slightly upon hearing his question and came to ask him in an inquiring tone. "What does the Feng family head mean? Do we know each other?" He sounded like he did not know him at all. Chapter 227. 1. I'm not a beast. I want to be. Her man Qing Tianlin was taken aback by that response before he started to laugh softly. "What? You're going to pretend to not know me? If the person standing before you now is Qing Qing, I wonder how sad she would be to see this." Those words were meant to be just a test, seeking to find any clue on the man's face that might tell him otherwise. But regretfully, he did not find anything, as there wasn't even a single change in the man's eyes. "Is the Feng family head trying to win my favor by doing this?" Qing Yili's green eyes were dark, his voice indifferent and emotionless. If the Feng family is really secretly rearing evil creatures, the Evil Purgers Coalition would never show any favoritism, so family head Feng might as well save your effort. Upon saying that, he did not say anything more but turned his tall, lean figure to go walking outside. The utterly dismissive attitude shown to him caused Qing Tianlin to be unable to help but clench his hands up tightly into fists. His gentle-looking eyes became tainted with an irrepressible rage. When did this lowly bastard wolf, who has always looked up to him, started to become a person who is able to look at him with contempt? "Qing Yili, stay right there," Qing Tianlin said through gritted teeth, and was about to go grab that tall figure. The woman who had half her face covered by her hair and had been standing at the door suddenly moved to block Qing Tianlin and said in a raspy voice, "Would the Feng family head please hold your step?" "Move," Qing Tianlin said gravely with a darkened face. The woman acted as if she had not heard him, remaining in place to block the man's way forward. Qing Tianlin had never been affronted like this before. In his previous life, he was praised and worshipped wherever he went, and who didn't show him absolute respect whenever they saw him? Even when he came here to this other world, after he displayed his incredible gifts and talents, no one had dared to offend him like this. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Never had he thought that the person he had despised the most all this time would now look down on him from an elevated position, which was something his own proud heart could not possibly accept. His gentle-looking long narrow eyes became stained with a deep scarlet glint inside. He slowly raised his eyes, and his eyes that shone with that strange colored glint met the woman's single inky black eye that was exposed. But when their gazes met, it caused Qing Tianlin's eyes to widen. He saw the woman's inky black iris had spread to turn her entire eye fully jet black, without a single trace of white in it. It was queer and absorbing to see, and a gust of wind blew past. The hair covering the woman's face lifted slightly under the wind, and her other eye that had been veiled by her hair was seen. It looked like the eye of a wild, ferocious beast, bright with a malevolent and bloodthirsty glint. At that moment that Qing Tianlin was stunned into a daze. It was not known how far Qing Yili had gone, and not even a shadow of the man could be seen from there. Chapter 227. 2. I'm not a beast. I want to be. Her man and the woman right before him, who possessed those inhuman-looking eyes, then said in a low voice, I'll take my leave. Qing Tianlin still looked a little taken aback as he watched the woman's back, his mind falling deep into thought. The woman was clearly not human at all, and was more like a beast type of creature who had not evolved completely, but was clad in an unsuitable human flesh facade. Why would such a strange creature remain at Qing Yili's side? In a corner that nobody could see, a lean figure suddenly tensed up, before his entire body bowed over with one hand clutching at its throat. Green veins bulged and tensed up on the back of that hand, a rather frightful sight to see. He looked like he had swallowed something disgusting as he coughed violently, like it would only stop if he coughed out his heart and lungs. When the woman following close behind saw that, and she walked over hurriedly, as she held something in her hand, looking like she was going to feed it right into his mouth. But she had just gotten close to him, when the man suddenly gripped his hand around her wrist, and flung her hand aside. The item the woman had been holding in her hand then fell to the ground, when her hand was flung to the side. It was then seen to be a transparent teardrop-shaped elixir pill, where a red thread-like substance swirled within. My lord, the woman said as her lips moved slightly, and her brows furrowed, seemingly hesitant to speak. After a long while, the woman sighed and then continued to say, Why must you do this? Things will not possibly end well going against the coalition chief. Qing Yili looked like he had been drenched in water, sweat pouring out from his body. The expression on his face looked incredibly frail, and he seemed to be in great agony. His thin lips had turned to a grisly mess of blood and broken flesh, and it was clear to see how great the torment he must be in. I will never touch that. Qing Yili endured the agony wrecking at his body, his words stuttering out through his tightly clenched teeth. His mind was filled only with thoughts of a lovely and smiley young lady, an image of perfection. He had decided long before that it was his destiny to silently watch and protect her. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. If he were to go touch something like that, he fears that he would never be able to stand beside her anymore. The woman's inky black eyes seemed to flash for an instant of grief before her raspy voice sounded out to say, My lord will not be able to last very much longer. People of the wolf tribe are born bloodthirsty and cold-blooded. You have lost touch with your innate nature for too long a time. Are you really going to allow yourself to devolve into a normal human being? Innate nature? Huh? Qing Yili suddenly broke out into a bout of scoffing laughter, and those blood-caked lips that he had bitten through from agonizing pain, before split as blood flowed once again from them. A sight that was both sad and beautiful at the same time. His voice was tinged with a slight hoarseness as he said slowly, From the moment I was brought back by her, I had already become human. She was the one who gave me a reason to live. If I turned to no longer remain human now, then what reason would I have to go see her again? Chapter 227. 3. I'm not a beast. I want to be her man. If the coalition chief knows of the existence of the woman my lord just mentioned, he would never be able to accept it at all. He wouldn't dare. Qing Yili lowered his eyes, his averted gaze hiding the silently surging tempest within. He knows very well the consequences when I become truly enraged. The expression on the woman's changed, but she did not say anything, but just silently accompanied the man. Qing Yili remained standing there, his body stiff and still, not moving in the slightest like a stone statue, his gaze staring into the distance, and his thoughts drifted someplace far away. At that moment, he was missing someone immensely. There were so many things he could not say to anyone else, but only to her. But he could not. For her own safety, He could only choose to silently shoulder all of it himself. Even though he felt so desolate and lonely without her by his side, like he was just a soulless and unfeeling walking zombie. Kliang, Qingyu had accidentally bumped into a table, and a delicate and exquisite little bonsai pot had smashed onto the floor. Oh, you, little junior. You are really just too much. You've murdered my little flower the very instant you came back. Who could that highly dramatic and exaggerated cry of dismay have come from other than the effeminate man from the faint mist sex deviant department, who was more girlishly beautiful than a real girl? It was said that after Qingyu went to properly sort out that arrogant and self-important bunch from the soul cultivators department, who liked to pick on weak little ones, such incidents have all of a sudden miraculously never be seen again. And after a whole bunch of people came to know that Qingbei and Qingyu were actually siblings, their attitude towards Qingbei had taken a 180-degree turn as well. Not to mention how polite they have become, a good number of toadies would also deliver themselves up to the door to Bootlick and try to curry favor with him. Who didn't know by then that not only was Qingyu a prodigious all-element wielder, she was on extremely close terms with a good number of the inner circle's top 5 ranks. Whoever that comes to offend her must not want to remain in the faint mist sect any longer. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Though Qingyu herself was not aware that she had ever been on that good terms with those few people. Feng Tianhen had already come out from the faint mist sect for several months now, and Luo Lanji had just remained there for just 1 month before he went gallivanting off into the world again. So the deviant department had now reverted back to having a whole bunch of wild monkeys with no one to control them, enjoying complete freedom to do as they pleased every single day. Even the effeminate man, who always cared so much about his looks, had gained 2 caddies from slacking back on his cultivation training. But at that moment, Qingyu did not bother herself with the effeminate man's angry stomping of feet and his outrageous wailing. She was instead staring at the pile of broken pottery and scattered soil, her brows creased together. What was wrong with her? Chapter 227. 4. I'm not a beast. I want to be her man for just an instant. Her heart had suddenly felt rather depressed, and the feeling had been rather agonizing. And having always been a careful and alert person, she had actually slipped up and broke a bonsai plant. Has something happened? To someone she knows. It shouldn't be Lu Junyao, as he had just used the communicate crystal to speak to her yesterday. So it must be someone other than him. If it wasn't him, then who was it that had made her feel it so intensely? Qingyu felt a headache coming on, and she massaged her temples. But all of a sudden, she stopped and her phoenix-like eyes seemed rather taken aback a moment. Why had she suddenly thought of little Yi? Is this merely because she had not seen little Yi for such a long time? Was she just thinking too much into it? She wondered if this could be linked to something that had happened up in one of the upper realms. Looks like she would have to quickly deal with things here and go up to the upper realm to find out for herself. And she can no longer afford to wait till Lu Junyao comes back to accompany her into the forbidden grounds. She would have to go in to check the place out on her own. Cloud Heaven. Dark Lands. The man seated high up leaned back lazily in his throne, dressed in a noble and luxurious purple robe, complementing the man's tall figure well to make him look even more exceptionally handsome. Purple really suited the mysterious and evil air exuded the most. At that moment, the incredibly captivating countenance was tinged with a hint of languidness. A hand propping up his cheek, as his half-narrowed violet eyes watched the frantic ramblings of the people below, their voices raised in discussion. Song Jian was the one who prophesied that the Mind Freak Peak is about to appear. Although that old thing is not one of us, but he is known to be rather capable. Seems like it will really appear within this year. Why are you getting so excited about for? Even if it really appears, the Overlord is the one going. None of us are even qualified to go. The Overlord vanished without a trace for so many years. It makes one wonder if his cultivation has deteriorated in that time. Do you know how valiant and spirited the Overlord was back in the day? If the Overlord had not fallen prey to the devious trickery by those scheming scoundrels from the Hunters Guild, the Dark Lands would have reigned over the entire Cloud Heaven. So what are those few people talking about? Once the Overlord ascends the mind-free peak and succeeds in gaining its legacy, would the Dark Lands still have to fear that we'll not be able to hold reign over the entire cloud heaven then? That's right, that's right. The Overlord is unparalleled. Summarized in a nutshell, they were all enraptured in blind reverence and worship. Sun Luo was standing just a short distance away from the throne, as he looked at the man sitting unmoving there, not even blinking his eyes, and he could not help but suspect something. Could his lord have fallen asleep? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. But just as he was about to go rouse the man softly, he saw the man suddenly smile, and his low and magnetic voice sounded out softly. Quiet. It was as if his voice was magic. The raucous tumult that had rocked the hall like a raging blaze suddenly seemed as if it had been struck at its mute acupoint, to turn strangely quiet, where not a single sound could be heard. Sun Luo could not help but felt a corner of his mouth twitch. That was his lord all right, where a casually tossed out word was more effective than any thousands of words from himself. Chapter 228. 1. A woman has her eyes set on him? Everyone had their sparkling wide-eyed gaze filled with anticipation fixed upon the man on the throne, waiting for him to give them a rousing speech. Unexpectedly, the man merely curved up the ends of his lips in an unreadable smile and said nonchalantly, "For a miracle that manifests only once every 1,000 years, if only I am to go see it myself, it might turn out to be so dull." What does the Overlord mean by his words? I can see that everyone is so excited about this. Why not we hold a competition in the Dark Lands to determine the strongest among all of us? The strongest 3 will then accompany me to go enter into Mind-Free Peak, to witness this realm of the gods together with me. Lu Junyao's lips were still curved up in an indifferent smile, but his nonchalant words immediately caused everyone down below to explode into a furor. A competition that would be held in the Dark Lands, and the top 3 winners will be able to accompany the Overlord to go into the Mind-Free Peak. How great an honor would that be? Were their ears playing tricks on them? But it seemed like there were only 10 spots available into the Mind-Free Peak, and each of the 5 great powers in Cloud Heaven were allowed too. Would so many of them be able to get in at all? That was the thought that went through many of their minds, and someone raised that question very soon. My lord, the Dark Lands have only 2 spots. If we are to do as my lord says, to have the top 3 winners follow you inside, we are going to need at least 4 spots to be allocated to us for it to work. The person had spoken everyone's mind, and upon hearing that someone had raised that question aloud, they all turned their eyes to look inquiringly at the man seated high up on the raised pedestal. Lu Junyao clicked the corner of his tongue as his violet eyes flashed with a dark glint. So what if we are given only 2 spots? Those 2 spots given to the Hunters Guild would be a waste anyway. So we'll just have to take the spots they hold when the time comes. All of you have better give your best performance to win the top 3 spots, and your lord here will bring you out to see the world. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Iyuhaya. That's really the style of the Overlord of the Dark Lands. Pure utter arrogance and reckless willfulness. And it was that very contempt he showed to the rest of the entire world that made all of them willing to submit themselves to him. Just as the debate was growing heated with fervor among the people down there, a black-garbed Dark Lands disciple suddenly walked in through the doors and said respectfully, "My lord, there is someone outside seeking an audience." Lu Junyao arched up an eyebrow, and before he said anything, it was Sun Luo who asked curiously, "Who is it?" Chapter 228. 2. A woman has her eyes set on him? The person claims to be the princess of the Siam Seas who nearly lost her life when she was persecuted by an unknown power several months ago, but was fortunately saved by my lord's valiant intervention. After making a full recovery from her injuries, she has specially made a trip here to come thank my lord for saving her life. Cough. Cough cough. What did you say? Sun Luo almost choked on his own saliva, staring with his eyes wide. Are you sure that the valiant hero whom you said saved a person out of righteousness is talking about our lord here? That would be such an earth-shatteringly rare occurrence, like having the sun rise up from the west, or seeing waters in the oceans flow in reverse. when the yin and yang of light and darkness have switched places. Not to mention that the Dark Lord's reputation in Cloud Heaven never had a good word said about him. He was someone who could smile while taking a person's life without batting an eye. Meddling with other people's affairs out of a sense of righteousness was something that man would do only if he had lost his mind. Sun Luo slowly turned his head around to glance up at the man, whose face was clearly showing a rather doubtful expression. Sun Luo then opened his mouth to ask, "My lord, when did you ever come to be so valiant as to save a princess from the Siam seas?" Lu Junyao looked at him out of the corner of his eye. "Haven't we always have no lack of people who would come up with all kinds of reasons to try to establish closer relations with the Dark Lands?" He gave a scoffing laugh and said with contempt in his voice, "But this person has really chosen the wrong excuse to use, which just shows that she does not even know my character at all. This lord here only kills people, not save people." Everyone there was in agreement. That was really the truth. Seems like that so-called princess from wherever those Siam seas really, or was really hiding some ulterior motive. Sun Luo was just about to open his mouth to ask the disciple to go ask them to leave, when the disciple suddenly took a step forward, as he held an exquisite jade box, and said with his head lowered, "This is what the princess asked your subordinate to present to my lord. She said my lord will understand, once you see what is in the box." Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Lu Junyao said in an indifferent tone. "Open it." The disciple acknowledged the order given, and he then undid the clasp on the outside of the box gently. Inside the box was a strangely familiar-looking piece of purple cloth. Anyone in the Dark Lands would know that their Dark Lord was greatly spoiled with riches and lived in the lap of luxury. No matter what it was, he only used the best, and the clothes he wore on him was naturally the same. And throughout the entire Cloud Heaven, only the clothes Lu Junyao wore was made from the thread from heavenly silkworms. The Dark Lands purposely reared a bunch of heavenly silkworms for the sole purpose of making Lu Junyao's clothes, and among the silkworms, there were 2 extremely rare purple heavenly silkworms. Because Lu Junyao liked purple clothes, they had kept them just for their Dark Lord. And the piece of cloth in the jade box could be seen to be made from the thread of those 2 purple heavenly silkworms. Chapter 228. 3. A woman has her eyes set on him? All of Lu Junyao's clothes had its own special mark, and that was why everyone could immediately tell with just one look that the piece of cloth before their eyes was indeed one of their lord's clothes. And to think that a piece of their lord's clothing had actually fallen into the hands of a princess from the Siam seas. In that instant, thoughts of uninhibited love and affections immediately rose up in everyone's minds. But upon seeing the violet eyes of the man on the throne narrow devilishly, and his aura starting to turn slightly sinister, all of them quickly banished those thoughts out from their minds. All right, with the lord's unpredictable and highly temperamental character, the princess from the Siam seas must have secretly employed some kind of trick to get her hands onto a piece of their lord's clothes. It was actually not too far off from what everyone had guessed. Even Lu Junyao himself did not know how, and when a piece of his personal item could have come to fall in another person's hands. But as he wasn't exactly in a very good mood at that moment, the pair of violet eyes on his face shone with a dark deep glint, becoming even more unreadable than usual. With that clear and obvious change in the aura his body emitted, how could everyone there possibly not sense it? All of them then lit a candle in their hearts for a particular naive and ignorant princess. Their Dark Lord's obsession with cleanliness was well known to all of them, not to mention something so repulsive like having a stranger come to touch one of his personal items. He wouldn't even allow anyone to enter his room at all. A person who was highly particular about little details like this. Haha. Some of them really did not even dare to imagine the grizzly and the little princess from the Siam seas would come to meet. Everyone was clearly eager to watch the upcoming great show, but Sun Luo was not about to grant them their wish. He cleared his throat loudly and said to everyone, "Let's all disperse. Didn't the Lord just ask all of you to go prepare yourselves so as to win the top 3 positions in the upcoming competition? There is no time for any of you to stay here and be so nosy. Everyone go now." Everyone was speechless, Sun Luo, aren't you just trying to drive all of us away from here, so that you can watch the scandal unfold by yourself? This was a scandal concerning their most revered and supreme Dark Lord. An occurrence that was to some extent as rare as the miraculous manifestation of the Mind-Free Peak. An event not to be missed. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. But their wish was doomed to be denied. Their position was lower than him, and they had no choice but to be driven away with sullen faces under Sun Luo's dark gaze. In the vast audience hall, only the black-robed disciple was left standing there, still awaiting instructions. After a long while, the man finally opened his mouth to say, "Let her come in." The black-robed disciple acknowledged his orders and retreated outside. After a while, a young woman wearing a light blue long dress came walking slowly in. There wasn't an excessive amount of accessories on her, looking simple and elegant, but the air she carried around her as she came walking in felt unusually noble. Chapter 228. For a woman has her eyes set on him? Till the young woman came close, it could then be seen that she looked adorably simple, the kind of girl that one would find hard to hate. Her pair of sparkling clear untainted eyes seemed like they were able to look straight into a person's heart. Her full and luscious lips pressed gently together a little nervously. Upon seeing the man seated languidly high up on the throne with a lazy expression on his face, she immediately looked like her soul had left her body, suddenly standing frozen in her spot, and not moving at all. After a moment passed, her eyes then lowered as she blushed, before she bowed in a ladylike manner. "My respects to the Dark Lord." Lu Junyao glanced at her and said, "You know who I am?" "That is only natural," the young woman said in a gentle voice. A corner of Lu Junyao's mouth lifted slightly. "And you do not fear me?" The young woman's fingers clasped together within her sleeves twisted up in uneasiness before she said softly, "The Dark Lord seems to be rather different from what is said about you out there. My father said that the Dark Lord is highly unapproachable and aloof, but I do not think that the Dark Lord is that cold and heartless, and actually has a kind heart inside." The twitch that was tugging incessantly at a corner of Sun Luo's mouth was going to drive him absolutely mad. From which world had this young woman come to form such a hallucination that couldn't have been more wrong? To think that she could actually say that his lord was kind. People would surely laugh themselves to death. Hearing the young woman's words, Lu Junyao did not show the slightest ripple of change in his expression, but just a darkening of his eyes as he said, "Not to mention the kind of misunderstanding that you have of me. The thing I would like to know is how you came to possess something that belongs to me. Has the Dark Lord forgotten all about it?" Upon hearing what Lu Junyao said, the young woman looked highly surprised. As though she suddenly remembered something, she then went on to explain. "The Dark Lord must be too busy handling thousands of tasks a day. Does the Dark Lord remember how you lent a hand and saved me by killing those evil people who attacked me 1 month ago?" Sun Luo was shocked. Such a good deed did not sound like anything that his lord would ever do. Had he gotten too full from eating, and had nothing better to do, but to go save a damsel distress? Seeing that there was no reaction from the man, the young woman continued to say, "I was severely wounded at that time, and the Dark Lord saved me out of pity. But the Dark Lord seemed to have something urgent to attend to that day, as you wanted to leave in a hurry. In a moment of panic, I came to accidentally tug off a piece of the Dark Lord's clothes. After being rescued, I asked around and came to know that the material on that piece of cloth was only worn by the overlord of the Dark Lands." After her lengthy explanation, the end of Lu Junyao's eyebrow twitched slightly, seeming to have recalled something. But recalling that thought just made him want to hit someone. He finally remembered. It was just 1 month ago that he came to know that Qingyu was attacked by the dark zombie, and was caught in a highly dangerous situation. He had gone on to tear through the fabric of space and time from the Darklands when he departed from there. The dimensional tunnel had seemed to be set against him back at that time, where he came to be transported to the wrong place, ending up somewhere near the Siam Seas. And the young woman before him was indeed being pursued by a bunch of people. Only the heavens knew that he had no intention of meddling with other people's affairs. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. But the young woman had come running straight towards him, and those people had thought that he was one of her companions, immediately attacking him. That was how he came to annihilate the whole lot of them. It could be said that it was all because of this woman that he came to be delayed, or Qingyu would not have suffered such grievous injuries, causing her to need 2 whole weeks of recuperation before she recovered. But as to when the woman had come to rip a piece of his clothes off, he really did not have the slightest impression. He never wore any piece of his clothes for all that long a period in the first place, and that torn piece of clothing had probably been tossed out to heaven's new wear. How laughable! She caused a delay in his affairs, and still dared to come show herself before him, claiming that she sought to express her gratitude. What she sought would only be her own death. Chapter 229. 1. My body, my heart, my soul, they all belong to you, Dark Lord. The young woman started hesitatingly, seemingly a little embarrassed as her cheeks turned slightly red. I would call it affinity. Several months ago, my father sent you an invitation as my mother got pregnant again and gave birth to a baby boy. My father was so happy he hosted a banquet and invited all the leaders and people of high authority throughout Cloud Heaven. But the Dark Lord here did not come, and it seems to me now that it was because Affinity had deemed that time was not yet ripe back then. So we were unable to meet at that time. Her shy and bashful gaze with the hints thrown out in her words could not be any more obvious to see. Sun Luo had immediately understood that the young woman was uninhibitedly confessing her feelings for his lord. That was really brave and bold, I must say, respect. But the expression on Lu Junyao's face grew more intimidating and dangerous looking. He then said slowly, "May I then ask, what could have brought the princess here today?" The young woman's face flushed a deeper shade of scarlet, and her voice was thin as a mosquito's. I am merely thinking to do everything within my ability to repay the Dark Lord for saving my life. Although the Dark Lord left in a hurry that day, I had not dared to forget how the Dark Lord had come descending like a celestial god from the heavens to save me from imminent grave peril. Sun Luo almost died from his well-suppressed mirth inside. This princess here is really just too interesting. With that face his lord possessed and the position he held, he would at least have 8,000 female admirers, if not a full 10,000. But Lu Junyao was really just too eccentric, that discouraged any woman from taking the initiative to approach him. There really was a bold woman who came to court her own death several years back. It was remembered that the woman had had the audacity to come up to try to seduce him, but she had merely touched his sleeve when he immediately threw out those clothes. And that audacious woman who touched him without permission was executed on the spot by blood incineration, a punishment meted out within the Dark Lands, dying a heinous death. The woman who tried to seduce him was the eldest daughter of a large clan in Cloud Heaven, and her status was rather extraordinary, but she was killed without even blinking, just because she touched his clothes. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Who would dare to pursue the matter? Of course no one dared. They still wanted to live. Ever since then, of course there were women who were still crazily in love with that powerfully strong Dark Lord who was as good-looking as a god. But no one dared to come try to make his acquaintance, keeping their feelings hidden in their hearts. They would occasionally pass by the Dark Lands, seeking for a chance encounter with the man when he goes out, hoping to leave a lasting impression on him. But unfortunately, the ever-unrestrained demonic lord of the Dark Lands who always does as he pleases would never remember any unimportant people. So no matter how hard they tried, he did not pay them the slightest notice. No response was forthcoming from the man at all, and the young woman could not help but feel uneasy in her heart. She bit her lower lip and said in a soft voice, "Great Dark Lord, I know that you do not like people to touch you, and I will not break that taboo. But can I be allowed to remain here, so that I can do everything within my meager power to repay you?" Chapter 229. 2. My body, my heart, my soul, they all belong to you. Lu Junyao narrowed his deeply darkened eyes. Though his face did not show any other emotion at that moment, he looked like he was on the verge of losing control, his impatience at its peak. Knowing the saying that saving a person's life accumulated more good karma than building a 7-story pagoda. Sun Luo very kindly glanced over at the young woman before he opened his mouth to help her diffuse that awkward atmosphere. Though after his words were spoken, the air grew even more awkward. May I ask how the princess intends to repay my lord here by remaining behind? Are you going to serve him tea and pour him wine as a close personal attendant? Or are you going to undo your robes to play a sweet and docile pillow mate and become a member of the Dark Lands? Those words could not be any more direct or straightforward, and it immediately caused the young woman's face to burn a bright, brilliant red. But her reaction had also confirmed that Sun Luo's words had indeed hit the nail right on the head, revealing the young lady's very thoughts. She wasn't just purely seeking to repay the debt of saving her life. What she wanted the most was to gain the affection of this man right before her eyes, and to further their relationship another step. And Lu Junyao was a guy who hated nothing more than having such women come try all manner of ways to try to get close to him. He had lost his patience completely when he was hounded and harassed by all those women before, and that was why he had that woman brutally executed to deter all the other women from coming close to him anymore. Never had he thought that such a thing would happen once again after so many years. If it was his wily little fox that was seeking to get close to him like this, he would naturally be over the moon. But for any other woman, he really didn't have the patience for it. At that moment, Lu Junyao then said in an indifferent voice, "I have never needed a maid by my side to attend to me, and I already have specific people tasked to serve me tea and pour me wine. A princess status is highly noble, and you might not be up to such menial tasks. If you are seeking to be the person that shares my bed, I do not think your looks are adequate. So just forget about repaying any debt, as my intention was not to save you. You were just lucky and was not destined to die just yet. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World." What a merciless attack that was. Those words struck the young woman, and her red flushed face immediately turned pale, not to mention just how pitiful she was at that moment. It might not be that bad if he had referred to something else, but he had actually assessed a woman's looks that women cared about the most about to be so low, which must have really hurtful. The young woman actually wasn't that bad looking, pretty and adorable, a little frail looking, which could easily elicit a man's protective nature. But unfortunately, some people were just that insensitive and dense, unable to appreciate the beauty of a young woman like that. In his eyes, he still found the wild and untamable ferocious little wily fox to be much more pleasing. After clearly expressing his rejection, Lu Junyao went ahead to stand up from his throne, completely disregarding the pitifully tearful figure down below, as he walked right past the young woman. Chapter 229. 3. My body, my heart, my soul. They all belong to you. Just before the tall figure was going to disappear out through the door, his voice that had become extraordinarily tender and melodious suddenly sounded out. "Have you missed me, I am to guess? You must have missed me so much that you were not even able to sleep. Haha. Is this the first day that you just discovered that I'm shameless? If I were by your side, I would have been even more shameless." The voice was slowly becoming too soft for them to hear clearly what was being said, but those words earlier had resounded in the audience hall, to reach the two other persons' ears. The young woman's face went white, without the slightest trace of color. Who was he just speaking to? And his voice had been so gentle. Who in Cloud Heaven did not know that the Dark Lord never had a woman by his side before? To the extent that his preferences for companionship had become suspect, that cannot possibly be a woman, right? She still stood a chance. That was how she reassured herself in her heart. Sun Luo's face was, however, showing a knowing look. From being shocked and astounded initially, he had now become used to it. His lord must be speaking to that little lass down in the lower realm. See how gentle and tender he is. He had heard from Bai Yen that the two of them were very close now, and his lord indulged and doted on her very much. It looked highly probable that she would very soon become the Lady of the Dark Lands. It was said that she was really interesting and possessed unparalleled skills in medicine. Looking at how his lord was acting, she must have captured his lord's heart nice and good. Hehe, how shockingly rare. On the other side, Lu Junyao was walking towards his living chambers, and the communication crystal ball in his hand was flashing with a gentle purplish glow. Reflected within that crystal orb was the very little fox his heart had been missing so much just a few moments ago. The moment that tiny, exquisitely beautiful face appeared before his eyes, he immediately could not help but feel like wanting to grab that faraway young lady to come to his side, so that he could hold her in his arms and commit a good bout of bullying. In those deep violet eyes, a fiery blaze burned, seemingly able to incinerate a person to ashes. Qingyu pouted when she saw his face. "What is with that look in your eyes? A look that wants to eat you up." The man replied honestly. Qingyu was speechless. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU ever since their feelings were made clear to each other. This man was really such a passionate person. Are you all prepared to go to the mine-free peak already? Qingyu had not forgotten about the thing she wanted to ask him. Lu Junyao raised an eyebrow. It is prophesied that it will manifest within the year, but no one knows exactly when it will be. So I am currently still here in the dark lands. Qingyu nodded. When you leave to go there, remember to tell me about it. Chapter 229. For my body, my heart, my soul, they all belong to you. I'm a little worried, because I keep having this feeling that something bad is about to happen. Qingyu said with her brows knitted together. She intuition has always been accurate. Since she was having such bad feelings, that just means that something was about to happen. Seeing the young lady's tightly furrowed brows, Lu Junyao could not help but laugh softly. Stop imagining things. A scourge like me lasts 1,000 years. Haven't you heard of that saying? The heavens wouldn't dare to take me back so easily. His words have just been spoken when he immediately saw the young lady's face on the other end turning an uglier shade. He paused for a moment, and with his low magnetic voice tinged with tenderness he said, "Moreover, I have such an adorable little fox inside my heart now. How could I possibly bear to let anything happen to me?" The instant his voice fell, Qingyu's face flushed a bright red, her large alluring phoenix-like eyes flaring wide as she stared at him. This fella. What was he saying? Little fox in his heart. She was getting goosebumps just hearing him say that. You do not need to stare at me like that. No matter how wide your eyes get by staring at me, I am unable to kiss you now. So stop seducing me anymore. Lu Junyao said in a rather helpless voice. Seduce your big fat head. He really can twist his words around. Qingyu had not even started to retort scornfully when she saw the man suddenly sigh and say in a soft voice, "When would it be before you can come here to cloud heaven and be by my side?" His voice actually sounded rather regretful. What's wrong? Qingyu asked in concern. Did something happen over on his side? He was looking rather exhausted and lonely, and she suddenly felt her heart start to ache. Lu Junyao blinked his devilishly mesmerizing violet eyes. You know, it was just right before our conversation. A strange woman came running out of the blue here to the dark lands and offered herself in marriage to me. The expression on Qingyu's face stiffened, her brows tightening together. What? I do not remember how I came to save her life before, and she just came running straight to me, wanting nothing but to marry me, acting all coquettish and sultry right before me. It was really just disgusting. Lu Junyao was acting exactly like a child complaining to an adult after he got bullied. It was thought that if the princess from the Siam Seas were to hear the vile impression she had left upon the Dark Lord, she would surely drown in her own tears. After Qingyu came to understand what he said, she really did not know whether to laugh or to cry. If that man had been standing right before her at that moment, she might not be able to resist violating that handsome face that was showing such an innocent look. Although that was how she felt in her heart, she kept a serious expression on her face and asked, "How did you handle it then?" "I said that she was too ugly and not worthy of me before I sent her away." Qingyu then said, "Did she then cry?" Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. You must this fella reject the girl so harshly and be so direct with his words? At least, leave a girl a little bit of face. What has it got to do with me whether she cried? Lu Junyao scoffed disdainfully. Besides you, I cannot be bothered with anyone else. I belong to you alone. When any other woman lusts after me, I will naturally have to nip any fantasies they have in their head right in the bud. Qingyu could not help but laugh, her heart strangely filling up with joy. She then said teasingly, "Looks like you're rather enlightened, and have quite a honeyed tongue." Surprisingly, the man on the other end then threw her a sly wink, before he said in a mushy voice, "I got that honey from your sweetness. How murderously coquettish." Chapter 230. 1. Caught while escaping. How embarrassing not wanting the man who was so far away to worry about her. Qingyu did not tell him about her intention to go into the forbidden grounds on her own. Though Lu Junyao had said that he would accompany her there, because it was not known what kind of untold dangers lay in there. But because of the mind-free peak, he was not able to pull himself away at that moment. In addition to that, she could somewhat fuzzily remember a dream she had last night, and the dream had been about her entering the faint mist sect's forbidden grounds. But as to what exactly happened in that dream, she really couldn't recall anything, and that was why she felt a pressing need to go in there to have a look, to see what was it in there that was trying to lure her. On that day, Qingyu went back to the dormitory after her morning classes. A powerful spatial wormhole suddenly appeared in her room, and she could not help but stared warily at the unexpected phenomenon before her with wide eyes. But when that wormhole faded away, the person standing in front of her surprised her greatly. "Little Burrow? Where did you come out from? Isn't that golden-haired youth in golden clothes that weapon spirit of hers who threw a tantrum and ran away from home a few months ago? But why was he looking so wretched and badly battered? That exquisite and beautiful-looking face was covered with black and white blotches, his hair in a complete mess. Even his clothes were all crumpled and twisted, making for a rather hilarious sight. That weapon spirit of hers had always been vain and proud, paying a lot of attention to his looks and image. How did he turn to become like this, after just a trip out there on his own? You got yourself into such a state because you got into a fight, or were you not looking while walking and fell into a hole? Qingyu asked him with her brows knitted together. She had thought that this fellow would remain angry for at least half a year before he would come back. The golden-haired youth ignored his mistress' undisguised teasing, but went on to look at her with a highly aggrieved face. "I have finally returned after enduring so much difficulties. Can't mistress at least comfort me a little?" "Oh." Qingyu blinked her eyes innocently at him. "What do you mean? How come she does not seem to understand what he was saying? Where does the mistress think I went off to during this period?" Zhongmai asked in a hurt tone. "Read latest chapters at Wuxia World." Qingyu immediately responded. "Didn't you leave home in a fit of anger?" Zhongmai clenched his jaws tightly together. "I was indeed angry on that day. To think that the mistress would rebuke me because of a man. But I had intended to return after just a short while at that time. How could I possibly really leave my mistress? And I was trapped by Qing Tianlin, who used his puppetry technique on me. His technique has improved to another level from before, and he imprisoned me in a secret dimension, which I was unable to break out of. That fella Qing Tianlin again." Chapter 230. 2. Caught while escaping. How embarrassing thinking back to the plot Qing Tianlin had hatched up in the fleeting cloud fortress. If little Burrow had been by her side, it would have caused that guy quite a bit of trouble. Seeing that he was able to keep little Burrow trapped, it would seem like that guy's cultivation had increased by quite a bit. Watching the youth who looked like he was about to explode from anger, Qingyu narrowed her eyes smilingly and stretched a hand out to ruffle his head affectionately. "All right now, don't be angry anymore, will you? The next time your mistress sees him, I will definitely teach him a good lesson." "Yeah, you must not show him any mercy," Zhongmai said sternly, seemingly afraid that she would not bear to strike the guy due to their sibling relationship in the past. But Qingyu had now really let go of that part of her past. With all the things that Qing Tianlin had done, there was no longer any reason for her to be soft-hearted towards that guy anymore. The next time they meet, it would be as mortal enemies where only one could live. "All right, I will be making a trip into the faint mist sect's forbidden grounds today. Since you've come back, why not accompany me inside?" Qingyu remembered that she still had important tasks to attend to, and came to open her mouth to ask. Of course I will. But I think I need to go tidy myself up a little first. The youth said as he looked himself over with a critical eye. Qingyu could not hold back from laughing out loud. I'll give you half an hour to go get yourself sorted out. After fiddling around here and there for a while, and Zhongmai had rid himself of the sloppy mess, he was just about to call out to Qingyu to say he was ready, when he saw the young lady seated beside the table with her chin propped up in a palm, seemingly deep in thought. He could not help but be puzzled. Mistress, what's wrong? Qingyu threw a glance outside, and her eyes flashed with a glint. Do not leave through the front door. Why? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. We're not going out to do something just and above board here, and it would not be good for anyone to see us. Qingyu explained. The youth did not suspect anything, but merely nodded and said, Then let's just use a dimensional portal to transport us to the Forbidden Grounds then. The real reason Qingyu did not want to use the front door was actually because Lu Ji had been keeping watch from a distance, and she would be discovered if she went out from there. Lu Junyao had ordered Lu Ji to follow Qingyu's every single step, and she must not allow anything untoward to happen to Qingyu, even it would kill her. So it could easily be imagined how diligent Lu Ji was in her duty under the strict orders Luo Junyao gave her, in addition to the somewhat hazy feelings she held towards Qingyu, where she literally kept herself just a mere 5-step distance away from the young lady. Lu Junyao had said that the faint mist sect's Forbidden Grounds seemed to feel a little ominously evil, and would naturally be worried about letting her go in there alone. Hence he had ordered Lu Ji to keep a close watch on the young lady, to not let her sneak her way into that place on her own. Chapter 233. Caught while escaping. How embarrassing. On the other side, it had already been about an incense stick's time since Lu Ji saw Qingyu go into her room, and it looked like she would not be coming out anytime soon. Lu Ji could not help but feel a little doubtful. Didn't she say that she forgot something and came back to get it? Could she have fallen asleep in there? She then called out softly, Miss Qing, have you found what you're looking for? Do you need Lu Ji here to help you? After her voice faded away, she did not receive any response. The expression on Lu Ji's face involuntarily changed, and she quickly pushed the door open. As expected, the room was empty, without a single sign of anyone inside. Damn it! Lu Ji could not help but curse. She had been too careless. The Overlord had said that the last Qingyu had a nimble mind that was full of endless ideas, and the last could easily slip away right under her nose. He had even reminded her to keep a tighter watch on the lass, but she had not really believed him. After all, she had found the young lady to be gentle-looking and highly adorable. But the lass turned out to be a wily little fox who was highly skilled at pretending. But it's all right. Her tracking skills in pursuing her targets was deemed to be the best among the 12 courtesans, and she had known that Qingyu would not be so docile as to remain in one place. So she had already set something up on the lass. So if she were to go in pursuit now, it still wasn't too late. On this side, Qingyu and Zhongmai had already come to the faint mist sect's Forbidden Grounds. This was her second in this place, and saw that the people guarding the Forbidden Grounds were still the same 3 strange people. The aged old man held a wine gourd in his arms as he leaned back against the entrance into the Forbidden Grounds, snoring thunderously as he slept. The baby-faced young one was plopped down upon a big rock, seemingly picking at something she could not see in boredom. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Only the frosty-faced young man who exuded an intimidating aura looked rather normal, standing dutifully before the entrance, his tall figure not moving in the slightest, like a majestic mountain. Upon seeing that someone was approaching, the man with the frosty aura immediately swung his piercing gaze around. Upon seeing the 2 people, his always expressionless face actually showed a hint of surprise. He was probably surprised to see that there wasn't a single scratch on the person that came out from these Forbidden Grounds previously, and had actually come here once again. Some unknown insect must have crawled into the nose of the soundly sleeping old man when he suddenly jumped up and gave a huge thunderous sneeze, causing the bored baby-faced youth, who was toying with ants at the side, to jump up in shock. The old man rubbed his nose vigorously, cursing and swearing in an angry mumbling voice for a while before he saw the familiar-looking face of the young lady. His eyes immediately lit up and he cried out in delighted surprise. "Little one, this old man knew that you are highly blessed. You are actually still alive." Chapter 230. 4. Caught while escaping. How embarrassing! Upon hearing those words, the baby-faced youth immediately stopped playing with ants and leapt down from the rock, to appear right before Qingyu in the next instant. He scrutinized Qingyu from head to toe before clicking his tongue and said, "TSK, really highly blessed. Even the three of us would not dare to trespass in there carelessly, and you had actually come back out from there safe and sound, and in one piece. You're really not any ordinary person. Tell me something, did you not encounter any danger in there?" The baby-faced was thinking that no one had ever come out from these forbidden grounds alive before. For the young lady to have come out from there alive and well, she must have been really lucky and have avoided all the danger. Unexpectedly, Qingyu arched up an eyebrow. "I encountered a 1,000-year-old dark zombie. Is that considered dangerous?" She had very nearly lost her life in there, and she was still rather angry thinking about it. Once her words came out, the strange trio immediately gasped loudly in utter disbelief. A 1,000-year dark zombie? To think that there would be such a terrifying creature in these forbidden grounds. That was a foe that could only mean certain death. This young lady must have accumulated good karma for her past few lifetimes to still be alive now. At that moment, the gazes of the few people looking at her became different. The old man subconsciously gulped loudly. "So why have you come here again for? Are you thinking of going in there again? The last time you went in there to save someone. What about this time?" Qingyu smiled disarmingly at him and replied, "Don't worry. I did not come here to create trouble. I have something very important to do, and I really have to go in there. Seeing that we're already such old acquaintances, please let me through. Just pretend that you have not seen me, and nobody would know anyway." The trio were stunned speechless. Who here is an old acquaintance of yours anyway? They have not even met each other 3 times yet, and they are now considered as old acquaintances? Tui. They wouldn't be considered passing acquaintances, even if they've met 3 times. You want to gain entry, without having to suffer for it? No chance. Seeing the look on their faces, Qingyu immediately knew that her words had not worked. The smile on the lips then deepened as she said, "Guys, I really have something very important to do in there. I implore that you do not do anything to stop me, as I do not want to raise my hand against my elders." The old man was delighted when he heard that. "You're thinking of fighting us? A young little baby doll like you is really being rather feisty, aren't you? With your thin arms and skinny legs, you might not even be able to last 3 strokes from this old man here, and you're actually... What is this smell?" It was not known from when a faint fragrance came wafting in through the air, the scent seeping deep into a person, relaxing one's entire body, but also made one really feel like enjoying a deep relaxing sleep. The 3 people immediately realized what that scent was all about. The old man was the first one to succumb as he fell to the ground. Already a little tipsy from drinking his wine, he was suddenly feeling so sleepy, he could not keep his eyes open anymore. As he fell towards the ground, his mouth still spat out these few words. "Little one, you cheated." Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, and a dull thud sounded. Right after that, the face of the baby-faced youth and the young man looked absolutely furious, like they wanted to eat Qingyu up as they stared at her, before they both fell to the ground asleep. Qingyu was not so dumb as to clash with them head-on, not to mention the time that would have been wasted. The fact that these 3 people were assigned to guard these forbidden grounds meant that they were not any ordinary persons, and would definitely be of a maniacal level. So she had chosen to use her wits instead. Just as she was waving Zhong Mai inside, the toneless voice of a woman sounded behind her. "Miss Qing." A chill ran through Qingyu. Chapter 231. 1. Mysterious intruder. How did she catch up with them so quickly? She had used a dimensional portal to come here, so how did this woman manage to find them so fast? Upon seeing the young lady standing stiffly there, not turning around to face her nor saying a single word. Lu Ji then opened her mouth again to ask, "Where is Miss Qing intending to go? Why did you leave without informing your subordinate?" Qing Yu was somehow feeling a little embarrassed as she slowly turned around and met the woman's nonchalant expression on her face. She coughed awkwardly a couple of times and then said, "I am just taking an aimless stroll." If Lu Ji is not recognizing this place wrongly, this place is the faint mist sect's forbidden grounds. If any disciple comes here secretly on their own, they will be punished. Lu Ji mercilessly exposed her flimsy excuse. A corner of Qing Yu's mouth twitched, and she helplessly admitted, "All right, I was about to go in there." Lu Ji's brows creased together. "The overlord gave me orders that Miss Qing must not go in there alone on your own, but to wait for the overlord to come back first. I am not going in there alone." Qing Yu smiled as she blinked her eyes innocently. "Don't I have you to accompany me now?" Lu Ji was taken aback. "Me? When did she say that she was going to accompany her in there? All right, let's not waste any more time. The effects of the sleep-inducing incense I used on them will only last for an hour. If we continue to delay any further, we'll not be able to get in when they wake up." Taking advantage of the moment that Lu Ji was still somewhat stunned by her reply, Qing Yu quickly went over and grabbed the woman's hand to pull her towards the Forbidden Grounds entrance. The young lady's soft hand that was slightly cold held her fingers tightly. Lu Ji lost her ability to think for an instant and was led right inside mindlessly. By the time she was able to react, they had already walked into the place. Lu Ji could not help but be a little disgusted at herself at that moment. Damn it! Why was it that every time she was faced with this young lady, she would turn to become someone completely unlike her usual self, like she was not able to control how her body reacts at all? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Yu Zhongmai was beside Qing Yu, but others would not be able to see him under normal circumstances. He raised an eyebrow to look at Lu Ji and then said, "Mistress, I seem to feel that this woman has feelings for you." I saw that when you were pulling her by her hand, she looked like her soul had left her body, and her eyes looked rather strange. Although Zhongmai was not human, his instinct was however rather sharp. Is it really that obvious? Qing Yu glanced at the green-clothed woman with exquisite facial features beside her. Lu Junyao had told her to not get too close to Lu Ji carelessly, as Lu Ji likes women. Chapter 231. 2. Mysterious Intruder. TSK, just can't figure her out. She's so beautiful looking, why must she like women? With her looks and level of cultivation, one really wouldn't know what kind of a woman would be able to catch her eye. The Forbidden Grounds looked no different from the last time she came into this place. It was said that many people had come the last time, seeking to get their hands on the sacred Buddha palm lotus, but most of them had died in here. Little burrow, help me sense if there is any aura fluctuations nearby. Qing Yu said. Zhongmai acknowledged, and his beautiful gold and silver eyes immediately clouded over with a white glow, before recovering back to its original state a little while later. How? The youth shook his head with a frown. I did not sense anything. And, not to mention aura fluctuations, I did not find any signs of life at all. How did it become like this? Qing Yu asked in surprise. She clearly remembered that when she came here the last time, she was attacked by a whole bunch of maniacal spirit beasts. No signs of life. She would naturally trust Little Burrow's words completely, as this fella's senses had always been much sharper than hers, so he could not have been mistaken about this. Zhongmai was also looking rather doubtful as he shook his head to say, Mistress, we have better be a little more wary. Devilry's definitely afoot when things turn strange. Qing Yu's face was grave as she nodded. On another side of the Forbidden Grounds at that moment, the air rippled strangely, and two people suddenly set foot into the place. One of the two people was a young man who looked to be in his 20s, but his face was ominously expressionless, and the aura emitting from his body felt highly sinister and oppressive, heavy and suffocating. You're sure this is the place? The Lord's divining skills have never been wrong, and if we are able to complete the mission this time, our Lord would definitely win high merit for it. Let's split up and move separately. All right. After wandering around for a good while behind Qingyu, Lu Ji could not help but open her mouth to ask, "Miss Qing, what do you really want to do coming into this place?" Qingyu remained silent for a moment before she replied, "My mother's soul fragments are in here, and I need to bring her out." Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The young lady's aura suddenly turned gloomy, causing Lu Ji to be taken aback. After a while, Lu Ji raised her head and looked at the young lady. "I will help you." Hearing that, Qingyu smiled slightly at the woman and replied in a soft voice, "Thank you." For an instant, Lu Ji felt as if her heart had been struck by that smile. Her charming eyes subconsciously lowered, seemingly trying to hide how flustered she had felt for a moment. The silence did not last for long. Just as they had taken several steps forward, a heavy tremor suddenly rocked the ground, and a very large crack appeared. Chapter 231. 3. Mysterious intruder. The silence did not last for very long. Just as they have taken a few steps forward, a violent tremor rocked the ground they were on, and a huge crack appeared on its surface. Qingyu was in mid-step, and still had one foot lifted up in the air when the ground suddenly split wide open, very nearly making her step into empty nothingness to fall in. She had just managed to steady herself when another violent tremor shook, and the two people fell straight down the chasm. They spun dizzyingly, but both of them were fortunately able to react fast enough, quickly righting themselves. Descending at a very fast speed, they came to land firmly on their feet. Lu Ji was still able to remain calm and composed because she was confident of her own powers. However, when she looked at the young lady beside her, she did not see the slightest hint of panic or fear either. Her moves nimble and agile when they landed. Against her frail and harmless outward appearance, her skills were in a completely different world. Her gaze could not help but deepen as she suddenly recalled Lian Ji's words. This young lady was something whom even the Overlord treats differently, and hence there must be something exceptional about her. She isn't a person that any of them can afford to anger, and she must remember to keep a respectful distance. What is going on here? Qingyu raised an eyebrow and stomped her foot on the ground. It was hard sandstone beneath her feet. Raising her head to look up, she could not see the slightest sliver of light. A corner of her mouth twitched involuntarily. How far down have they fallen below the surface? It was clearly still bright and sunny outside, but it looked like they have fallen down a bottomless pit, so dark that a person would not be able to see their hands before their face. If she did not possess night vision, she would have been completely blind at that moment. So what caused that violent tremor just now? She was deep in thought when the ground beneath her feet shook again, this time the shaking accompanied by an earth-shattering rage-filled roar, so loud that their ears hurt. Qingyu was a little taken aback before she turned towards the golden-haired youth, her face highly suspicious. "Didn't you say that there was absolutely no sign of life in here?" That roar sounded very much like it had come from a spirit beast. Zhongmai expressed innocence and shrugged his shoulders to say, "I really did not sense any sign of life earlier. That roar from a spirit beast tells us of two possibilities. 1. We are far too deep underground, and this place has a shrouding effect around it that stopped me from detecting this place. 2. That roar had not come out from a spirit beast itself, but was just a kind of powerful spirit aura left behind from a spirit beast before it died, to intimidate intruders into retreating." Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. After hearing him out without knowing why, Qingyu seemed to feel that the second option was more plausible. But intruders? Could it be someone had come into this place before her? When that thought came into her mind, she immediately said to Zhongmai, "Little burro, lead the way. See where that sound came from." "Yes, mistress," the youth said, and his body went walking off in a certain direction. "Mistress, follow closely behind me." Chapter 231. 4. Mysterious intruder. In the darkness, it was hard to see the expression on her face, but Qingyu suddenly went to pull at Lu Ji's hand at that moment and said in a soft voice, "Hold on to me. Don't get separated." Lu Ji paused for a moment, and her hand unconsciously tensed up. as she reached her hand out to hold Qingyu. At the spot which had been the source of that angry roar, two white human figures flew back out and did a backflip in the air, before landing steadily on the ground. They had come close to what seemed like a mountain cave. Heh! Wonder what kind of a spirit beast's aura is guarding this place. It's quite a troublesome one. One of the two figures said in a cold voice. With just the spirit beast's broken remnant consciousness, it's already so powerful. It must have been really powerful when it was alive, at least the 12th level and above. But the limits of this low-leveled realm seem to allow only spirit beasts up to the 10th level to exist, so this was rather bizarre. The other person reasoned, it looks like we'll have to deal with this remnant spirit aura first, before we'll be able to retrieve the item inside. Fortunately, with the Lord's farsightedness, it is already immediately helping us. Hearing that, the two people starting chanting and a large skull head exuding pure evil came out from their bodies. Shrill and ear-piercingly strange laughter coming out from its mouth, as it slipped into the narrow little mountain cafe. The next moment, the powerful roar of the spirit beast that previously sounded was heard again, now become one of horror and fear. Powerful forces clashed repeatedly inside the mountain cave, and the spirit beast's remnant consciousness started to become weaker, but stubbornly refused to dissipate, like it was fighting with all it had to guard something. Haha, death is almost upon it, but it's still putting up such a useless struggle. We'll just wait, for 10 breaths at most, and it will have disappeared without a single trace left. The white-clothed man laughed arrogantly, but his boisterous laughter had not boomed out fully when the expression on his face was overtaken by a malevolent look. Who is it? The man beside him seemed to have sensed something, as well as his expression became wary as well. From within the depths of darkness, two people came walking out, and there were Qingyu and Lu Ji coming this way. Qingyu threw a measuring gaze over the two strangely dressed men, their clothes the likes of something she had never seen before in front of her. Her expression was indifferent as she countered. And who are your people? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. They did not look like people from any of the three great sects. Hearing that, the white-clothed man did not answer her question, but merely stiffened his lips malevolently and said, "We are the people who will send you down into hell." Their spirit auras flared out in an instant, which caused Lu Ji's eyes to darken. You are people who came down from cloud heaven. Who sent you? And for what purpose? To think that people from cloud heaven had actually come all the way down to such a low-leveled realm, and had so coincidentally appeared here in this place. There must be some nefarious reason behind it. Upon hearing that Lu Ji was able to see through them, the two people could not help but be slightly taken aback for a moment. But they recovered very quickly and retorted, "You're also from cloud heaven? In that case, do not interfere with our business." Chapter 232. 1. Treasure. The spirit beast was closely guarding those rude words that sounded almost like a command immediately caused Lu Ji's face to darken further. As someone from the Dark Lands, the Overlord had been highly indulgent and protective over them, never allowing anyone to bully his people from the Dark Lands, or he would pay them back 100-fold. Hence, people from the Dark Lands were innately haughty and proud, and Lu Ji was no different as well. She was already carrying an instinctive sense of enmity towards those two people, and it was becoming harder to contain the hatred in her heart. Don't be rash. Qingyu held Lu Ji's arm, and shook her head slightly. Mistress, there are extremely powerful spirit energy fluctuations in this cave. The golden-haired youth said softly, but the expression on his face was a little puzzled. But the spirit aura does not seem to be from a human, but a divine beast. What? Qingyu's eyes widened in surprise. A divine beast? A creature that was so rare that they existed only in legends. Super spirit beasts that were more powerful than peak-level spirit beasts that have reached several tens in their levels. Only then could they be called divine beasts. But in a low-leveled realm like the Constellation Lands, how could the aura of a divine beast possibly exist? One might not even be able to find such a thing in the White Fens lands. This was really too astounding. Little Burrow, are you absolutely certain of that? Qingyu knitted up her brows to ask. The youth did not immediately reply, and then went on to simply say, "Just listen to the sounds in there." The two white-clothed men continued to relentlessly attack the thing inside the cave, and she seemed to be able to sense that the angry roar she heard earlier sounded like it was crying out in sadness and despair, a lot softer now, which caused a feeling of sadness to surge up inside her heart. It seemed to have sensed its impending death, its roars no longer resisting that strongly as it fought, but seemingly still filled with a sliver of hope and a desperate cry for help. "Save me, I beg you to save me. I must not die." That's right, it was crying for help. That was the message that came into her mind in that instant, as she heard the sound coming out from inside the cave. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Qingyu could not help but be surprised when she discovered that she could actually understand what the roars were trying to convey. But before she could give it any further thought, she found that the roars were growing softer and softer. Zhang Mai and his mistress had always been linked in their minds, and he immediately knew what her intentions were. He then asked Qingyu, "Mistress, you want to save it?" Qingyu's eyes grew deep before she came to say in a calm voice, "Yes, of course we must." Those two people's cultivation powers are not to be underestimated, their entire persons emitting a highly evil aura. It is not advisable for mistress to move against them, so you can just leave it to me. After the youth finished saying that, he immediately moved stealthily away from Qingyu's side. He usually moved about in an invisible state, and other people were not able to see him at all. It was only when he engaged in battle that he would automatically come to reveal himself. Chapter 232. 2. Treasure. The spirit beast was closely guarding hence. After one of the white-clothed men was sent flying from a powerful blow, the good-looking youth all aglitter in gold suddenly came to appear before everyone there, catching everyone off guard. "Who are you? How dare you sneak up and attack us?" When the other person saw his companion was sent flying tens of meters away from a powerful blow, and was endlessly vomiting out blood, a fiery rage rose inside him. His face was malevolent, like he wanted to eat someone up. "We had not wanted to stir up any trouble in this low-level lands, but since you've come seeking your own deaths, then you cannot blame me. TSK, what a braggart." Zhang Mai's lips curled up into a contemptuous smile, the shape of his narrowed gold and silver irises transforming into inverted triangles, as he assumed his original form. A golden rhinoceros python that was over 10 meters tall, his girth as thick as 3 or 4 men's waists put together, as it flicked its red forked tongue. Its long snake tail curled around the two white-clothed men, and then tossed them up into the air, before catching them back in its grip, seeming to be toying with them. The sudden appearance of such an unbelievably massive python had not only stunned the two white-clothed men into a mindless daze. Even the ever-calm and composed Luji was unable to react for a good while. That small exquisite-looking face turned slightly pale, and it seemed like she had been shocked by the scene before her eyes as well. Qingyu's eyes merely showed a faint hint of helplessness. Did he really have to immediately cause such a big stir? Is it really necessary for him to reveal his true form? But she has not seen Zhang Mai assume his original form for so many years, and it looks like he had grown quite a lot bigger. The two white-clothed men were haplessly being tossed and caught by the massive python. Intense dizziness and fear caused their stomachs to turn as nausea wrecked at them, but they were unable to vomit anything out, which just worsened the agony. As highly skilled pugilists who were respected in Cloud Heaven, it was unthinkable that they were made to suffer such humiliation here in this low-level realm, and were helpless to do anything about it. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Only the heavens would know where this damned giant python had popped out from all of a sudden. Seeming like it had grown bored with the game, the massive python let out a cold, scornful snort, and with a light squeeze of its tail, 2 clear crisp cracks were heard. The necks of the 2 white-clothed people had been snapped in 2, their bodies mangled and deformed by crushing force, turned into 2 grisly unidentifiable masses of blood and gore. Their corpses were then dumped like garbage among the pile of rocks at the side. Lu Ji's face turned a little paler subconsciously. Chapter 232. 3. Treasure the spirit beast was closely guarding instead. The young lady behind her laughed softly and said, "All right, little burro, hurry up and change back already. Why did you have to make it so bloody? Can't you see how much you terrified this beautiful big sister here?" Lu Ji was still unable to react to those words when they reached her ears, but saw the terrifyingly massive python suddenly shrink in size right before her eyes as the young lady's voice fell. A brilliant golden light then flashed for an instant right in front of her, and there was no longer any signs of that frightening python anymore. A tall, beautiful-looking golden-haired youth stood in its place, an easy smile on his lips, looking every inch an obedient and handsome-looking youth. Especially when Qingyu had called for him to come over. He had even lowered himself to allow the young lady to violate the hair on his head, his uniquely gold and silver pair of eyes shining with a warm, gentle light, looking exceptionally moving. It was such an adorable sight it could make anyone blush. Who could possibly believe that this obedient and harmless-looking youth here was actually that massive python, who had just killed 2 men in an instant just moments ago? Lu Ji's face underwent a series of changes before she said with a look of utter disbelief, "He is." Qingyu smiled and went on to explain, "He is my weapon spirit, and his original form is actually a giant golden rhinoceros python. Wasn't he just so majestic?" Zhang Mai would usually not reveal his true form before people so easily. Of course, people who saw his true form before were basically already dead. But since Lu Ji was one of Lu Junyao's subordinates, she could be considered to be an ally, so there was no harm in letting her see him in that form. Upon hearing that, Lu Ji was even more astounded. A weapon spirit that possesses its own spirit beast form? She had never heard anything so bizarre before. Although it sounded absolutely unbelievable, that is the absolute truth. Qingyu went on to ruffle the youth's head once again, is indeed a weapon spirit that possesses a spirit beast form. Lu Ji took a good part of the day to fully digest the news she had just heard, before she finally came to a conclusion. The woman the Overlord has set his eyes on was no ordinary person indeed. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. With the deaths of the 2 white-clothed men, the cries that came from inside the cave slowly quietened down. Qingyu walked inside slowly as she scanned the surroundings, but she did not find any traces of any spirit beasts. She could not help but be a little surprised. Where had those cries came from? Just as she was feeling a little puzzled, something came to float down gently as it descended right before her eyes, which caused her eyes to widen for an instant. It was a great phoenix whose body was red as blood, measuring several tens of meters in length, its immense body filling up the entire mountain cave. It looked ephemeral and seemed to be in its spirit state, almost like the slightest gust of wind would cause it to disperse and fade. Chapter 232. 4. Treasure the spirit beast was closely guarding it looked highly weary and tired, its eyes unable to even open. But as Qingyu approached it, those eyes opened very slowly, revealing a pair of beautiful golden irises. Spirit beasts were supposed to be naturally wary of humans, filled with hatred and disgust towards them. But for some unknown reason, the phoenix seemed to trust Qingyu very much, its body not even flinching as she came very close to its body, its golden eyes gazing warmly and gently at her. "Are you all right?" Qingyu could not help but to ask in concern when she saw how weak and frail the phoenix looked. "Thank you." It was a very gentle female voice that came out of the phoenix's mouth right before her eyes. Spirit beasts would gain the ability of using human speech once they have attained the 8th level and above, and Qingyu was not surprised by it. Moreover, Little Burrow had said that this was no ordinary spirit beast before them, but a type of super spirit beast that belonged to the divine beast category, that could be said to possess heaven-defying powers. "Why have you become so frail? Where is your original body? You are very weak now, and if you do not return to your original body, you will disappear very soon," Qingyu said with a rather grave expression on her face. The phoenix shook its head slightly and replied, "My time was already running out, but I continued to remain here in order to fulfill my mission. Now that you've come, my mission has also come to an end." "Mission?" Qingyu asked, her face uncomprehending. The phoenix did not respond, like its strength had been stretched to its limits. The immense figure gradually turned more ephemeral and translucent, before it completely disappeared with a mournful cry. It was empty inside the mountain cave, except for a human-shaped object in the corner that was emitting a faint glowing light. Qingyu's eyes narrowed as she took few steps to approach it. The soul fragment was so frail it could also no longer be seen, but the sense of familiarity she felt made Qingyu certain that it was a fragment of her mother's soul. She kept the soul fragment into the soul-nourishing orb very carefully, and then heaved a huge sigh of relief. But before she could fully relax and let down her guard for a single moment, her body suddenly tensed up. A bone-chilling feeling suddenly assaulted her senses, and Qingyu subconsciously leaned her body backwards to dodge that deadly strike. She spun herself around and spotted a person completely wrapped in black robes hidden within the shadows, not making a single sound as the dark figure blended fully into the surrounding darkness. The figure had intentionally suppressed his own aura, and that was why Qingyu had not noticed his presence all this while. Without knowing why, looking at the black-robed person, Qingyu suddenly felt as if she had seen someone like that before, finding the person's dressing highly familiar. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. All thoughts in her mind suddenly stopped for an instant. She suddenly remembered. This man was dressed very similarly to the black-robed woman, with that frighteningly hideous face she encountered back in the Green Wave Kingdom's barricaded spirit tower. They were both wrapped up fully in jet-black clothes from head to toe, and they both gave out a highly sinister aura. So it seemed like the two white-clothed men who were dead had another companion, waiting quietly in here for the opportune moment to strike, carefully watching their every move. The objective that these people came here with could very well turn out to be the same as hers. Chapter 233. 1. Abducted by a mysterious person. The black-robed man walked out from the shadows slowly, his face hidden among his bundle of clothes. Only his ghastly white chin could be seen, which made him look highly compelling. Hand over the soul fragment you just took. The man's voice was chilly and cold, speaking without the slightest emotion. Qingyu innocuously shifted her feet a step towards the cave's entrance as her hands weaved a strange and unique sign behind her back. She arched up an eyebrow as she looked at the man and said to him, "What if I refuse to hand it over?" The man then replied curtly, "Then only death awaits. I wonder who will die first between us." Qingyu curled up the ends of her lips, and without waiting for the man's response, her body was already moving. The 5 golden needles at her fingertips glinted under the darkness, and with a flick of her hand, they shot right through the air towards 5 different spots of the dark-robed man's body. One of the golden needles was actually flying straight towards the lower half of the man, aimed at a spot that could not be explicitly described here. Shameless and despicable woman. Even though the man's expression could not be seen, just hearing his words spat out through tightly gritted teeth was enough to tell Qingyu how enraged he was. Qingyu blinked her eyes in innocence. How was she shameless and despicable? The figure of the man strangely disappeared from the spot he was standing in, easily dodging the 5 golden needles flying towards him. In the next instant, he appeared right before Qingyu and his pale bony hand swiped across right in front of her face. She immediately felt an intense dizziness coming over her, which made her eyelids feel extremely heavy, and they were drooping down over her eyes. In that instant just before she lost consciousness, there was only one thought that crossed Qingyu's mind. She has miscalculated and fallen prey to the opponent's sneak attack. Outside the cave, Zhongmai had detected another unfamiliar aura and was about to go inside when he unexpectedly received his mistress' instruction to not make any rash moves. In the end, after waiting it out for just a short while, he found that his mistress' aura had also disappeared as well. His eyes narrowed with a sharp glint, and his body shot speedily inside. The cave was empty without a single person in there. He tried to call out to Qingyu through their linked consciousness, but he did not get the slightest response. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. She must be in an unconscious state at that moment, and that was why she was unable to receive his thoughts. The youth's handsome-looking face could not help but came to be tinged with a sliver of deep silent rage. Damn it! To think that a person was actually able to take his mistress away from right under his nose. That was absolutely unpardonable. When the youth had charged right into the mountain cave in a fluster, Lu Ji came to sense that something was wrong. Self-reproach showed on her face, and she then said to herself, I should have gone in together with her. Chapter 233. 2. Abducted by a mysterious person. Qing Yu had gotten them to wait outside for her, as she was afraid that too many people might startle the divine beast's remnant consciousness. After all, the divine beast showed it was not defensive towards Qing Yu. How could Lu Ji have expected that in just a short while, she would suddenly disappear completely? Hearing her utter those words, Zhang Mai's tone was stony as he said, You wouldn't be of any help to her even if you had come in. The aura that was in here was more powerful than the combined strength of the other 2 men who died. You are not his match. I am my mistress' weapon spirit, and I will be able to sense her aura when she regains consciousness, which will lead me to where she is. As for you, I am returning back to Cloud Heaven. Lu Ji interrupted the youth. Those people are from Cloud Heaven. Miss Qing must have been taken there. I will go back and report this to the Overlord. He will know what to do. But when the Overlord comes to know that she had actually allowed Miss Qing to be abducted right before her eyes, she would not be able to escape punishment. Lu Ji's fingers clenched up tightly, and her eyes narrowed slightly, as she tried to hide any expression from showing on her face. She had not been able to protect the young lady who moved her heart. If anything was to happen to her. The aura surrounding her body grew depressing, and Lu Ji did not say anything more. She raised a slim arm and drew a line through the air before walking into the dimensional portal that had opened up. That was the fastest way for her to reach Cloud Heaven. Zhang Mai's lips curled up, and he glanced at the spot that Lu Ji had just disappeared from. She's rather concerned about the mistress though. Tearing a portal through time and space like that, if it was not done by people with unfathomable and profound cultivation, they would be severely injured by the turbulent surge within the dimensional tunnel. Although the woman's cultivation wasn't weak, but that would still affect her in some way. The youth lifted his elegant chin and sighed softly. Oh my mistress, even after being reborn into another world, your ability to attract people to you has not diminished in the slightest, and you're even not sparing the women now. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. At that same moment, after falling into an unconscious coma, Qing Yu was finally slowly coming awake. Her devilishly alluring phoenix-like eyes blinked in a confused daze. What is this place? She moved her body seeking to sit upright. But she had just turned herself over when she suddenly found herself falling. The shock caused her to quickly snap back to her senses, as she immediately righted herself. The feeling of finally feeling firm ground under her feet was great. Ever since she came to this world, she was always constantly falling at every turn, which made her life here anything but boring. It was only when Qing Yu felt the ground under her feet that she discovered that the place she had been lying on was actually a cloud. Her eyes involuntarily widened as she stared. What kind of a place is this? Did she die and come to heaven? Chapter 233. 3. Abducted by a mysterious person. To think that one could possibly sleep on a cloud. That was just incredible. You're awake. Just as she was taking in her foreign surroundings with a measuring gaze, the icy cold voice of a man suddenly sounded behind her. And it was a strangely familiar sounding voice. Qing Yu turned around and saw a man in black robes approaching. Since you're awake, come with me to go see the temple lord. When the man opened his mouth to speak again, Qing Yu was certain. Isn't this the voice of the person who made her lose consciousness with a sneaky attack? But it was different now from the person who had been bundled head to toe in black robes, till his countenance could not be seen at all. Although the man's voice was cold and indifferent, his countenance was however rather good-looking, pretty eyes and brows with cold hard features, making him look rather cool. Besides the fact that his complexion was a little too pale, he still looked rather pleasing overall. Qing Yu raised an eyebrow and strolled casually over to the man, seemingly unafraid that the man would attack her again. Her lips parted slightly as she said, "Wouldn't you say how you just forcibly bring a person to this place, without even a single word of warning seems to be rather rude?" Seeming like she was intentionally trying to tease him, the young lady widened her eyes and leaned her beautiful face closer. "Don't you know that skin contact between men and women is greatly frowned upon? So in what manner did you bring me here?" The man was startled by the sudden proximity as she leaned in close to him, and he innocuously took a step back as he snorted derisively. "I have never seen any woman who is as frivolous and flippant as you." Those words caused Qingyu to want to scratch her head in puzzlement. How has she been frivolous? Tossing that statement, the man just turned around with a curt "follow me," and went walking off without even turning his head around. Qingyu was speechless. The villains nowadays really act so self-righteously indignant. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. But Qingyu did not say anything, but just followed behind the man, her eyes measuring her surroundings. He had probably noticed her wandering eyes as the man went on to say in an indifferent voice, "No need to waste your time. You won't be able to get out of here. Even if you're lucky enough to escape, you will not be able to go back down to the lower realms." Qingyu muttered a soft "oh," and then continued to ask, "Then why have you brought me here? Is it because I am pretty looking, and you started to have nefarious designs on me?" A corner of the man's mouth twitched, and he struggled to hold himself back for a good while before he managed to mutter in indignance, "Shameless." He was probably feeling too angry inside to speak as his strides quickened quite a bit. Qingyu could not help but laugh out loud behind, thinking that this guy was quite an interesting fella. "Hey Elsa, what is this place? Do all of you always sleep on clouds? Aren't you afraid of falling off?" You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.